So this is what my farming games blueprints looked like a month ago. And here's what they look like now. Same game, same features, but it's a completely different project underneath. And that's part of what today's about. Hey, welcome back. I'm Pelmango, and I'm building a low poly farming game in Unreal Engine. And this is the devlog where I show you what actually happened this week, the good and the bad. Last week I was working through a grass removal system for the crop plots, and this episode's a little bit different. Today we're going to be talking about more of what goes on behind the scenes, with three things of full project cleanup while I move to the newest version of Unreal, my honest take on Unreal Engine 6, and a bit more personal why I started the project and where I think it's actually headed. So the first thing that's going on right now is I'm migrating the whole project to Unreal Engine 5.8, which is the newest version. And instead of opening the project and hoping that nothing breaks, I'm using it as an excuse to go back through and make everything look cleaner. Basically, when you're the only person working on a project, it's really easy to let organization slide. And nobody else has to read your blueprints, so nobody's making you keep them tidy. But that catches up with you, and sometimes I would open a graph and then have to read through it for 5 minutes just to figure out what was going on. So a big thing that I've been working on is using functions. So instead of having one really long string of all the different blueprints that I could possibly need in one blueprint graph, I'm going to have all the logic cuts into functions. So a function, for anyone who hasn't used Unreal before, is basically a small reusable chunk of logic with its own name. So instead of scrolling through a wall of nodes, you can just see place crop plot or check grid snap and know exactly what it does without even opening it. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was folder structure. So all the variables, assets, and classes can get their own folders instead of just sitting loose wherever I drop them, and that makes it easier to see what assets I'm actually using, what variables I'm using, and where they all are. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is naming each of my assets and all of my classes, just so that it's easier to know what I'm looking into. And so really specific names help me to define that. And the last thing is adding notes and labeling inside of the functions. So you can leave like comments on your functions, which really helps because even if you're inside a function, there's still generally multiple steps that you're doing in that function. So having labels and notes for each of those steps in the function is helpful. And none of this changes what the game does right now. It's a feature that you can't see, but it means that every feature that I build from here on out gets faster because I'm not fighting my own project to understand it. So the second thing is that Epic announced Unreal Engine 6 at Unreal Fest, and there's a lot in there. But the part everyone's talking about is the AI integration. Tools like Claude and Gemini built directly into the engine to help with content and pipeline work. And on top of that, they're shifting away from blueprints towards the new language first. And I've got some thoughts on this. I want to be upfront and honest and say that I've come from years of playing games competitively, so I've spent a lot of time watching games get built, patched, and picked apart from the player side before I even tried building one myself. And my take is that AI in game engines is a good and a bad thing. And honestly, it's not even really AI's fault either way. It's exposing a problem that was already there. Big studios and small ones have been reusing assets and engines for years, prioritizing shipping fast over shipping clean. And that means that bugs and all the rough edges get carried from project to project instead of actually getting fixed. And AI doesn't cause that, and it just moves everything faster inside of a system that already worked that way. And I'd say that what we're calling AI right now isn't intelligence. It's a large language model. So it's pattern matching and generating based off what it sees, not actually understanding your game the way that a person would. If AI ever got to a point where it genuinely understood a project, that would change everything. Right now, it's like a much faster copy and paste, which is useful because it frees developers time to spend more time on the parts of the game that actually make it unique, instead of the repetitive setup work. But it comes with the same problems as any tool like that. It needs to be checked and debugged, and it doesn't always pick the most efficient way to do something on its own. So I guess my total opinion is that I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it does speed up a lot of the process, but it's a process that was already broken and it doesn't fix the problem. So my last thing, and this one's a little bit more personal. So I got into this whole thing because gaming's always been a thing that I've been passionate about. I've spent years trying to hit the skill ceiling in whatever game that I was playing. The biggest example of this is Destiny 2, when I got into the raid racing and the speedruns and all of that. And I ended up around top 40 in the world for one of the raid races. And along the way, I learned everything that there was to know about the game. Damage rotation, speedrun routes, patch notes, and that process taught me a lot about how games get designed to be enjoyable and competitive at the same time. On top of that, I've always loved coding. Back in high school, it was like a logic puzzle that just got me hooked, where you need a creative solution to get something working. So putting two of those things together and trying game development felt like an obvious next step. And I've given myself a year to see how far that I could get. I started the farming game mostly as a portfolio, just something to prove that I could build an entire game, not just the code. And to be honest with you, I've lost some motivation on the specific project. A big part of cozy farming games is the art style, and art is not where I'm strongest. I'm much more in my element on the logic and system side. So going forward, my plan is to pick up the pace on this one. I don't need it to be the best thing ever made. I just need it to be finished and show what I can do. After that, I want to move on to something that I've been sitting on for a while, which is like a 3D co-op puzzle platformer game with custom level creation and like VoIP so that you can talk to people. And then some puzzles you can't talk to people and you have to figure out other ways to communicate. And so it'll just be like an interesting take on a puzzle game, and it's also co-op. So that's always fun. But I still want to finish my project. I want to get it done and over with because I think that it's important to show that I can do all of these different aspects and still be a portfolio piece. So next episode, we're going to get back into it. Crop growth stages are going to be next, and then you'll actually be able to see something on screen. And again, hopefully we're moving the pace along much quicker. If you've got any thoughts on Unreal Engine 6 questions or about any of the organization changes, drop them in the comments. I try to read them. Subscribe if you want to keep following along, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.